All right. So I had a buddy. His name is John Madden, which already I think sets you up for either success or failure, right? You either got to live up to a certain standard or whatever. Totally sure. Not the John Madden of that what everybody knows. Anyways, it's such a rad start. Like we would record. So I was basically training him to join the Navy SEALs. He ended up not joining the Navy SEALs. He ended up joining Special Forces. But every time we record some like workout or some like mental resilience or mental toughness type thing or whatever. But at the beginning of everything, is this thing recording? Like that was his intro. I was like, man, it's such a great. He was like doing the cool stuff before this cool stuff was cool, you know.
I love it.
So here's my soft opening. What's up, everybody? My name is Aaron, Education Director here at LivingFit, also the Master Coach of the obscure but wonderful and versatile battle ropes. I have somebody who's not so obscure. He has an amazing beard that should have its own show. He is the co-owner and the COO of Alpha Hippie. It's Ryan. Is it Booch or Book? Bucciantini?
Bucciantini. Think of three people.
Bucciantini, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that's what it was. And then I was like, you know what? I should have asked that before. But hey, Bucciantini. And he resides now in Southern California, knocking it out of the park with Alpha Hippie as the COO. He has many claims to fame, which I'm sure we will get into. So let's start with the age-old question. How in the heck did you get into fitness? And then we'll talk into masculine male development, Alpha Hippie, I don't know, self-development.
Great. Yeah, sounds
Alpha
good, man.
coaching. I was actually talking to a kid who I rolled with today. And I say kid, I think he's like 19 years old. Really incredible guy. And I told him, hey man, I got to leave because I got to, go home and shower and get ready for the show. And he's like, oh, or an interview. And he's like, oh man, are you going to go to the interview like that? And I was like, no. I'm like, this is for a podcast. And I'm like, I'm interviewing somebody from Alpha Hippie. You'd probably be super into it. And because him and his brother are exactly the Alpha Hippie people. But anyways, enough about me. How'd you get into fitness?
Yeah, man. So I'm a 14-year veteran of the Coast Guard. And that's really, if I was going to take it back to my roots, that's really where I got started. So one of my units I was at, our CO was a prior Marine. So he had a hard on for fitness. And this was the time when CrossFit was really ramping up, and it was the time when nobody knew what they were doing. So he came into the unit. I was new there. There were a couple other new guys there. We had been doing fitness. I dabbled in some triathlon for a little bit. And he's like, no, we're all doing CrossFit. No ifs, ands, or buts. We got the whole unit on board, and we started doing the most half-assed, have no idea what we're doing style of CrossFit. He had no idea what he was doing. He would write a bunch of exercises on a whiteboard, and we would all follow blindly.
So you were like 90% of the populace that was doing CrossFit at the time.
Oh, yeah. Dude, we fit in with everyone else. It's only now that I realize how fucked up we actually were.
Yeah. What did we just do? Why did we?
So, I did that for a little bit. I got super into it. I started doing a little bit of research myself on it, and he graciously sent me and one of my good buddies to get our level 1.
Oh, cool.
And, I got my level 1, and from there I was the best coach in the world. There's nobody could tell me different. I knew everything about everything exercise related.
Well, that's all you need is one good cert, and then you're good to go for life.
Dude, a Saturday, Sunday, and you're set. If you can't learn it there, you're good. Yeah, so we started training the unit. Over time, I was there for 4 or 5 years, something like that. We evolved a lot. We learned a lot, and I learned that, there was a lot of exercise knowledge outside of just the level 1, and I started educating myself. Fast forward God, 3-4 years. I got back from a deployment and I decided to open my own affiliate in San Diego. Did that with my wife for 5 years. Recently closed the physical location right before COVID hit, as I stepped into this role with Alpha Hippie, and created the Alpha Hippie exercise component of the program.
When COVID hit, and obviously probably at the beginning you're like, oh, well, whatever, this will just pass. But were you, now in hindsight, were you super thankful that you closed it and rolled over to a new role? Or is there still a little part of you that's like, man, that was kind of fun stuff? Or where were you at with that?
Yeah, so we switched models a few times. So I was all in on the CrossFit side of the house and then really dove deep into individual design and custom programming. So the last couple of years of the gym were all custom programs, mm-hmm. and we were focused more on the individual than anything. And we totally stepped away from group fitness. And so that really set me up for COVID. And when COVID first hit, call it like March timeframe, I saw the writing on the wall. And I was like, there's no way this is going to be a 2-week thing. So I approached my business partner at the time and I was like, hey, we should just buy ourselves out of the lease, cut the overhead, and really try to get ahead of this thing. And it was the best decision we ever made. We cut, the building lease and all of that. And I've just kept all my people on remotely. And so I have a good pool of probably 30-ish people that I'm still doing individual design with. It's awesome.
And so the people that you're doing individual design, is it primarily CrossFit or CrossFit style, or is it just generalized? And I don't mean generalized program, obviously very specific programming to them, but just it could be anything from, youth athlete to elderly, anti-fragile stuff or whatever.
Yeah, I really took a step away from the CrossFit methodology. I mean, that is at my roots and, it's still something I personally participate in, but I really started to look at people a little bit bigger than just an exercise program. And I started to look at the way they were living their lives and honestly started to steer people away from the intensity of CrossFit. So I like to say, what is really CrossFit at the end of the day? It's whatever we say it is. So I may tell them that they're doing CrossFit if that's what they want to hear, but it's really my version and something that matches their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, some people are bodybuilding, some people are powerlifting, some people are weightlifting, and some people are doing whatever we want to call CrossFit as. It could be sled pushes and strongman stuff with a little bit of intensity, and boom, there's CrossFit. Yeah.
I feel like CrossFit did this really good job of putting a solid copyright mark on functional fitness, for lack of a, using a very ambiguous term as there as well, right? But functional fitness and high intensity interval training and high intensity training in general, which that's the single greatest thing I think CrossFit did for the entire fitness industry, was bring high intensity back as a thing. Whereas you were either a bodybuilder or you were aerobic king and queen, right? And that was it.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, to me, CrossFit really made functional fitness cool for a lot of people. It gave people that lost, or that may have been athletes that lost their identity, an opportunity to dabble in that again.
Yeah.
Good or bad, depending on how you feel about it.
Yeah. Right.
Sometimes you gotta feed that animal.
Yeah, 100%. I know. And there was guys doing that functional training or whatever. It just wasn't as sexy and gamified as CrossFit. So when CrossFit hit the scene, it just went like bonkers. Yeah.
Totally.
Which I feel like it's now hit its saturation point in the US, but it's still growing crazy overseas, which is nuts. So
I've got some buddies in the UK that have opened gyms that are just, it's like CrossFit 2008 all over again.
Yeah.
Just better movers.
Yeah, right.
Thankfully. Yeah.
So obviously, so now into the alpha hippie realm as the COO.
Yeah.
Talk me through sort of whether it's a day in the life of what it is that you're bringing. Obviously, we've talked to Angelo at length and kind of from his vantage point, but I want to hear it from your vantage point. Who's the person? What are they getting at the end of the day or at the end of the journey? And how does the journey, is it sustainable, in the long haul? How does that work? And then also obviously what you do.
Yeah, great question. So Alpha Hippie is really for men that want to go pro, right? That's our tagline. That's our thing. And I'll break that down a little bit. As men, I really feel like we've lost this idea that, becoming a man is a learned thing. Right? It's something that's modeled. And over time, society has really evolved, right? The man of the early 1800s to the men of today are drastically different people. And the value systems in society are drastically different. So we're absurd to think that we can just walk through life and become pro men, right? I don't believe there's enough role models out there really embodying the values and the belief systems of a pro man. And that's really what we do. So the program itself is broken up into a couple different phases. The first phase is really about getting past your trauma, getting past your bullshit, all the things that were taught to you at a very young age. Unless we deal with that, everything we do after is really not going to work. You're just going to default to those traumas. Yeah. And once we make it through that, it's really your opportunity to, I'll use the analogy of a garden. You weed your garden and then you step into planting the garden, right? Like now you really have an opportunity to plant the plants that you want to plant. And then from there, it's just about watering them and nurturing them.
Yeah.
And you do it with a group of men who are really passionate about this idea of a pro man. And the community is really, I think, what does it. When you see other men living the life, that's the thing that you're like, oh man, I need to make some mental shifts here.
Yeah.
And step up my own game.
So who are the people and kind of what are some of the things that they do if they're not pro men right now where they could be like, man, shoot, that's me. And I could use a level up or use a throttle to go pro and drop some of this bullshit baggage and step into this new realm that is going pro.
Yeah. So I believe there's really 3 areas that everyone wants to improve in some capacity. It's yourself, it's your relationships, and your career, right? So in your relationships, if you feel like you're either losing connection with someone or you don't know how to communicate with the people closest to you, or you just struggle creating new relationships, you struggle putting yourself out there, we can help you with that. In your career, if you're the person that you're not making the money you want, maybe you have fear about asking to advance or something like that, or maybe you have some form of imposter syndrome, you're afraid to put yourself out there, we can also help you with that because all of these things are very similar. Mm-hmm. And then on the personal side, if you feel unfulfilled, you feel like you lack purpose, you're burnt out, you're just not really sure what you want to achieve in your life, we can help you with that.
Yeah. Is there like an age limit, lower and higher? I mean, obviously, I'm guessing adult, but
yeah, definitely adult. I would say now that we've run a bunch of people through the program, the men that show up, early 30s to 50s is definitely the ideal. After 50, you're just in a different place. You've already done the creation side of your life, and it's more about refinement and kind of polishing, the last couple chapters of your life. So a lot of the program doesn't necessarily pertain to that. And on the younger side, they're not necessarily mature enough, and they're looking more for accountability versus diving in and really going after some of those old traumas. So I usually like to keep the number at 30. We've had a couple guys in their 25s. They just have different problems. And when they engage with the community, it's challenging. You know, they're showing up with problem A and everybody else is over here, with problem B.
Yeah, like they're showing up like, is my dick really big enough? And then everybody else is like, no, it's super small, but who cares? As long as you have a house and you can keep a budget, it doesn't matter the size of your dick.
Totally. 100%.
Yeah, that's funny. Am I swiping right enough or?
Getting to work on time. Things like really, really basic things, more self-accountability problems, I would say, than anything.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, and I'm sure you have the tools and the skill, the principles to teach that effectively, but it's just a totally different set of problems.
Totally.
So then they go, obviously what do? They get on the email, they get on a phone call. How does that
sign up?
Yeah. They're like, okay, I want this. I need this for my life.
So we actually just launched a Going Pro quiz. So if you check out our Instagram, it'll be up on our website probably within the next week. Super cool tool. It's something Angelo and I created, but it asks you a bunch of questions, and then based on your response, it walks you through where we think, or some tools that you could implement to help get you to go pro. So I'm super pumped up on that. You enter your email, and then it'll walk you kind of through a flow. And based on that, if you're like, this is what I want, go ahead, schedule a call with Angelo. The only caveat to that is you got to pony up from day one. So we have $100 buy-in. If you're not willing to put $100 down on yourself,
what's the point?
We don't want to work with you.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point?
At the end of the day, the time will come where it gets bad enough, but right now you have to be able to invest in yourself from day one. Those are the people that we're looking for. Yeah,
that's interesting that you say that. So Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace, he does this budgeting thing or whatever, right? And it's like $100 to get going on it. Kind of the same thing. And every once in a while you can find ways to get it paid for, get sponsored, or, whatever. But at the end of the day, you still have to save $1,000 as your short-term emergency to be able to actually do the work to eliminate debt and start, saving and all this stuff. So it just makes sense. Like if I really want to change, it's such a great test. I don't like that money is the big value set for our society. But the thing is, it's like, you can't deny it. It's there. So it's like,
totally.
Yeah. Okay. $100. And if you can't put $100 down, like, you don't want to change. You're just saying you want to change. You're just looking for that sympathy, right?
I mean, to that point, there's a lot of people that are addicted to the idea of personal development, right? They're checking the box. They signed up for the program. They swipe their card.
Yeah.
Cool. My work's done. I don't really have to do anything. Like, you're attacking a problem with money, and that's not the solution to the problem. Like, you actually have to attack the problem. But the financial component is it has to hit you deep enough in your pocket so you're actually invested in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you actually listen. So you actually do some of the stuff. It totally makes sense. I love that. I mean, I think that's really important. I say the same thing for trainers, as if I'm mentoring them or whatever. It's like, no, like, getting a lower cost is actually doing damage to you, your reputation, your value, and their ability, their staying power, their retention, their ability to focus, their ability to value what it is that they're doing. It totally makes sense. It's funny that you say that. So there's now new studies because of social media that have come out where people actually get all of the endorphin rush that they would have gotten if they would have actually like achieved the medal or got, finished the race or something like that by just posting it online. Right. So you say that people are addicted to this like idea of checking the box and processing. And it's like, man, they actually have studies that shows like if I post it, oh, hey, I'm going to do this marathon. And then all these people are like, oh, I had a girl, I had a boy, I had a whatever, again and again and again. A lot of times the person will not actually end up doing it because really they were going to do it for the atta girls or atta boys or whatever anyways. Wow. And so then they end up not doing it. It's pretty interesting that is it.
That's wild.
So it's cool that you're saying, hey, drop a Benjamin Franklin and show us that you actually mean it. Okay, so then they drop the Benjamin Franklin, they commit, they're in the conversation. Now what happens? So is it like a certain period of time or what's the protocol now?
Yeah. So right now we're running a cohort a month. So it's very small. It's very intimate. Each cohort is 5 people. So the first 4 weeks of the program are all done via Zoom in a group setting. So from day one, especially when you're dealing with trauma, it's really important to walk through that with other men. I think we can all agree most men after the age of 30 really do not have a strong support network of other men unless you've really made the effort to go and create that for yourself. Most guys don't have it. So from day one, we want to give you a group of guys that you can bounce ideas off, that you have an ongoing connection with in the program. So you go through, it's 4 calls. If you're familiar with something called story work, it's very similar with that, but it's basically getting you to put your stories of, whatever's holding you back into the world, getting you to face those things and then really flipping the script on them and getting you to understand that those are just stories in the back of your head that you keep telling yourself that it's not actually you.
Yeah.
And once you unwind that, we move into part 2, which is momentum. And that's kind of what I was talking about with that garden analogy, where we go in, we've now weeded the garden, and now we start creating your life from both a macro and a micro perspective, right? So you really paint the picture of your big picture long-term goals. Like if you were going to die, how do you want to be remembered? And then what do you want the everyday to really be like? It's important to have that polar opposite because it gives you the opportunity to reverse engineer how to get to the things like the big level achievements, but it also gives you kind of a guide to start implementing the things you want to do day to day, right? It's like the small habits over time really yield the big change over time. And then we walk into the last phase of the program, which is really about, habit creation and, ritual, self-care, things like that. And you really learn how to start taking care of yourself and start creating habits that are actually going to walk you to the big picture goals.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, and we talked a little bit about that, obviously, with Angelo, and I was going to ask this really important question if you have to grow facial hair during, but then if you look at Angelo, he's just smooth as a baby's bottom, face and head. So,
dude, he's got a good mustache going now.
He's getting that mustache rocking. So.
Yeah.
Is that a prerequisite now? It's like, okay, during this program, you must grow you must shape some sort of facial.
Dude, I wish it was. I'll tell you what, you can learn a lot about a person just by looking at their facial hair. I'll tell you what. It's a character trait for sure.
It's a character trait. Yeah, nice. Okay, so then they go through it. God willing, hopefully, right? They get to the end and they're like, man, I've started to shape some of these routines and rituals and habits, and I'm starting to stack them together. Things are starting to go good. Because failure, mistakes, problems, friction, that's all like very normal to life. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. what are ways that they can sort of come back and get, or can they come back and get some sort of sounding board, or is there any sort of follow on or sustainable thing? It's like, look, just in case you lose your way, like, boom, we've got this or that, or is there anything like that?
Totally. Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple different ways you could address this. So when I built the system side of this, I wanted to use programs that are pretty recognized, throughout the world. So we have like a client Slack channel. So there's a couple different ways you can interact there. Each breakthrough is what we call the first portion of the program. Every cohort has its own channel, so they can interact with those guys. Or we have an alumni channel. So everyone that finishes the program goes into an alumni channel. And then every month we have an ongoing alumni call where we bring in experts or we teach something. And that's really their opportunity to bring challenges to the table and get live coaching during the call. And then there's also a follow-up option. If you really want to take it to the next level, Angelo offers, like one-on-one VIP coaching. So if you wanted something after that ongoing to address, bigger picture, or we have a lot of guys, in the business realm that are looking for ongoing business support. Mm-hmm. That's really where I feel like there's a ton of value with that.
Yeah, especially with Angelo and your experience, right? Your guys' experience. Yeah. And then Angelo I know before he sort of took this leap and came out to California and started, he had Alpha Hippie going, but not in this form, right? Not in this format, not in this way. He did that like super intensive business sort of boot camp almost, but it was.
That's really where I got to know him. Yeah. Like Ange is the guy that I just never stopped paying, and then eventually he was just like, "Hey, you want to be my business partner?" Like that's kind of how this whole relationship evolved.
It's so funny. I wonder. Obviously, he couldn't have prophetically had foresight on COVID or anything like that. But there's something about creating like sustainable systems for business or whatever, and seeing some of the issues with like brick and mortar or whatever. And not that you can't run a brick and mortar or anything, but seeing some of the shortfalls of that, which he experienced, I've experienced, you've experienced, right? We understand this from just a expense standpoint, right? It's really lots of overhead, and you could deliver the same thing without all of that nasty overhead.
Totally.
Given certain systems and certain platforms and certain forums and certain ways.
I really, to that point, I really think it just shows the importance of diversifying as a coach and not just so blindly following one way. As a coach, you have to be able to adapt for your athletes, right? Like every athlete responds different to a different stimulus. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't your business be the same?
Yeah.
And, stop just doing one thing and future-proof yourself.
Yeah. 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 And how do you do that? Like you can still focus on the main thing as the main thing, right? That makes you money, but there's inevitability and mistakes or problems or things that we're just not going to be able to see. It's like, okay, how can we be resilient to this? How can we, the Nassim Taleb, like how can we be anti-fragile as a business concept?
Totally.
Like in the same way that we would want to do that as humans, right? From a psychological to a physiological standpoint. It's like, duh.
Yeah. COVID, this is probably an unpopular opinion, but COVID really showed who the business owners were.
Yeah, no.
Who was a business owner and who was playing for funsies.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and not to short any of the people that were super serious but could only see it one way, but at the same time, it's like, well, that's not really business and definitely not entrepreneurship, right? It's like if you stay stuck here, it's like you're gonna miss the forest for that tree, and that tree falls and crushes you. Like you could have stepped back and looked at the other ones.
Totally.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship really is pivoting, right? Like learning how to pivot when the time is right and looking for holes in the market. That to me is the ultimate definition of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I lost 75% of my business when the bubble popped, right? 2008. And that's when CrossFit kind of came on the scene and blew up. Cause they had this like such a short buy-in model or whatever. You know, you didn't have to pay much and you could have opportunity to create quite a bit of money. But yeah, man, I'll tell you what, but the thing is like that made me very unafraid. Like once COVID, I was like, yeah, whatever. Like I'll just adapt. No big deal. You know, and we were already with LivingFit, we were just set up. Already. So we just pivoted our emphasis. Right. But
sometimes, you know, if you can see the opportunity in it, sometimes it's a much bigger opportunity, and it's just allowing yourself to pull off the Band-Aid and kind of get past that initial fear, and it kicks you through to the next level or next, you know, opportunity. So,
what's the future looking like? Is there going to be any, you know, potential pivoting or any, you know, resiliency building or adjustments or next steps or anything that you're at least allowed to or willing to share with Alpha Hippie? Or is it more of keeping the main thing and really trying to build this robust model for men?
So resiliency as like physical resiliency?
Well, no, I mean, as a business, like, are you guys looking to fill other markets aside from just, you know, the cohorts with the men and getting, you know, helping men go pro? Is there going to be other potential things that you're allowed to share?
Totally. We definitely have a lot in the works. So we're working with an app company right now that is not totally online yet. They haven't launched, but it's very focused on men's health overall. They have some big names behind it. We're going to be the flagship program, but it works off a 360 score. So it's using some super cool AI technology from a nutrition standpoint. So not like macro counting or anything like that, but recipe creation. So actually using the things that you have in your kitchen, it'll kick out recipes artificially based on what you have in the house, which is super cool. So they have this monster library. And like I said, we're going to be the flagship portion of that. So we're going to teach men who are having trouble or challenges losing weight. We're going to use some of the tools that we use in our signature program and bring that to them through the app. So I'm super fired up on that. That's going to be a huge step in the right direction for us. And what else? We're actually working on a media company. So that's something I'm super fired up about. You know, our podcast, the Alpha Hippie podcast, we're 250 episodes deep. We're partnering up with some of my very good friends that are crushing the podcast game on the business side of the house. So Angelo and I are very passionate storytellers. It's something we both enjoy doing, and we wanted to really create a company that's going to help us share the stories of other Alpha Hippies, at least in the beginning, and then expand to other coaches within the wellness or the mindfulness industry, right?
Nice.
There's a huge issue with podcasts right now where no one's making any money. They're creating amazing content, but these younger guys, they don't make any money, and that sucks. So we want to help launch them and start bringing in some money for people.
Yeah, you got to be the bigger fish in a smaller pond, right, in order to make money. And right now there's a whole lot of little fish in a really, really big pond.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally. So
that's super cool.
Yeah.
Nice. So how we usually finish all of the shows, and we try to keep them around 30 minutes. For our views, but how we usually finish all of them is we get perspective on what this idea or this concept or this principle of Living Fit is, and obviously not Living Fit the brand, but Living Fit as you see it, as you know, Ryan Bucciantini sees it, or as Angelo sees it, or as even Alpha Hippie sees it. But I would love to hear Ryan, your rendition of what is Living Fit.
Great question. So I'm going to talk about this from my own perspective. And I was a go-getter. I was a hard charger. Coming from the military, coming from CrossFit, I thought everything was very physical, very dominating. It had to be, manhandled. And over time, that really started to take a toll on me, both mentally and physically. And if I'm going to offer any advice for living fit, it would be find the opposite of that. Find the ability to feel, to connect with your body, and that will bring you nothing but balance. Right? Like when you are so physical, give yourself the opportunity to rest and recover. Connect with your body, prioritize your movement. If you're a little bit more on the aggressive side, you're more forward facing. Give yourself the opportunity to feel. Take a step back. Find some solitude and connect with yourself emotionally. And that is how I believe you would live fit.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Angelo got, might I say, uber spiritual on it. But it was rad. And we've had answers all over the board. We had, Dr. Andy Galpin that gave basically a perfect professor's formula of how to have certain capacities. Right. It was pretty rad. And so, but I love that. Find the opposite. And then make sure that that's, that creates that balance. Because that's something that I think we can all do, because we can all take a second to think about what it is that I'm doing in terms of fitness, and then find the opposite and get after that a bit. That's a pretty easy solution.
I'll leave you with this. If you're a hard charger, back off the gas 10%, slow down, check in with yourself. If you're the person that's more the feeler, you got to ramp it up a little bit. Don't think about it. Just jump in 100% and go.
Yeah, that's good.
That's it.
It's awesome.
I love it.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much. I really appreciate you chopping time out of your day, hopping on the LivingFit show, sharing a little bit about you, a lot of bit about Alpha Hippie. I'm super pumped. I know that there are listeners out there, followers out there, subscribers out there that will absolutely need what you and Angelo are doing for men with Alpha Hippie. So I appreciate you hopping on.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity, bro. Thanks.